My name is Sharon Sterling. I'm the director of ORF Global and the chief operating officer of ORF America. Such a pleasure to be here for our curtain raiser titled India and Europe Shaping the Shared Future. I'm joined today by an esteemed group of panelists. We have Fernando Gutiérrez, Member of Parliament of Spain. We have Marcus Perestrello, Member of Parliament of Portugal. Natalia Puzirev, Member of Parliament of France. Priyanka Chaturvedi, Member of Parliament of India, and Dinesh Trivedi, former Minister of Railroads from India. And I think that our job today is to give you a little bit of a teaser of what's to come. Talk a little bit about the India-Europe relationship, what is driving it at this particular time, and then what are some of the opportunities that we have. It's starting to sound a bit cliche, but for those of us experiencing the moment, it certainly seems more tumultuous, more uncertain, and more unpredictable. We're seeing a lot of tension in the transatlantic relationship, and the US is pulling back from global leadership and reassessing its partnerships and the value of those partnerships to them. And yet at this time, we're also seeing the relationship between Europe and India really blossoming and starting to get stronger. So over the next 2 days, we're going to be discussing cooperation on defense and security, energy transition, climate action, digital connectivity, trade, infrastructure, etc. So how do we strengthen this momentum? How does everyone here in this room who is focused on this relationship, what do we need to do to maintain and strengthen this momentum? And how do we increase the people-to-people ties that will provide support for these big opportunities? And then in particular for the panelists, at a time when budgets and resources are stretched, how do you convince your governments, and most importantly, your citizens, that leadership, cooperation on leadership and values is worth the investment? So let me turn to Marcos first for your opinion on the impetus for the recent efforts to strengthen the Europe-India relationship.
Well, thank you, Sharon. Thank you to the Raisina Dialogues for having an NATO-PA delegation here. Thank you for the Indian parliamentarians for the occasion to engage. I would like to start saying that NATO is an alliance of democracies. And so it makes sense for NATO to create a relation and for NATO Parliamentary Assembly to create a permanent way of dialogue with the biggest democracy in the world, which is India. So it will be, like one of our colleagues said on our previous meeting, it will be a contradiction not to have a relation between an alliance of democracies and the biggest democracy in the world, and that's a point that I think we should raise. I believe that there are many points in which makes sense for us to engage in dialogue and to deepening our relation. NATO members, NATO countries, European countries, and North American countries, and India. The list is very long. I will name 4 or 5 points, and one of them is answers to your precise question. First, although we have different perspectives and different positions regarding Russia full-scale invasion on Ukraine, we both agree, Europe and North America, NATO countries, and India, on the need to get close to put an end to that war. And I believe that we both agree that we should put an end to that war in a way that preserves the foundations of the rules-based international order. I think we agree on that, and that's an important point to underline. The second point in which we need to cooperate, and I think we all know how to do it, is on terrorism, because all of us have been are being victims of terrorism, and India has been the last one, but feels it very, very strong. A third area I would like to mention is that India, like European countries and North American countries, contend with a whole range of other issues that you mentioned: cyber attacks, food safety, food security, or climate change. It's common issues that no one really knows how to deal with, but we all know that alone we cannot deal with any of them. The fourth issue would be that as we in Europe step up defense spending, especially European countries, although North America will also have also some step up needs on that. Our defense industry must look for partners internationally, and from procurement of new equipments to the chains of productions, this can be an immense opportunity for Indian companies, for Indian factories, for Indian workers. It's a new area of cooperation in which we can cooperate. And lastly, trade between India and Europe. Europe already is responsible for 12% of India's trade. I think that we should all advocate strongly that, as President von der Leyen mentioned in her last visit to India, the intention of signing until the end of this year, 2025, the free trade agreement between Europe and India would be the most relevant contribute that we could give for that for the strengthening of the relations between the two blocks, you can say.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Natalia, if you don't mind, I'm going to come to you next to pick up on a thread that Marcos started us on in terms of defense and security cooperation. France has long enjoyed a robust security and defense cooperation relationship with India. As the EU and India begin to explore deepening cooperation on this front, what do you view as the biggest opportunities there?
Thank you. First of all, let me welcome all of you as I'm a French MP here and congratulate the organizers for this opportunity. Indeed, France has a strategic partnership in defense, but it goes beyond that. I would maybe just remind the words of the UN Secretary, who was close to here in Nice a few days ago. He said, Mediterranean Sea is a crossroad of continents, culture, and commerce. So what we have in common is that we have seas and oceans to protect, to be protected. So there's the dimension of the blue economy that is very important, sustainable development, and the free flow of commerce. So this is something that is very important for both our region, and we are also aware that there's a balance, from the west to the east with that respect. But to ensure this free flow of exchanges, we need to have stability, and we need to have security. And that's why we have been very much involved as Europeans, and mostly as French, because we have overseas territories in the Indo-Pacific region. We have been very much involved in preserving, for instance, the freedom of navigation. This is very important. And we are, as I said, strategic partners of India. We have many cooperation in the defense industry, but it's not all of that. It's about also promoting the democratic values that are common to India and Europe. And I would just like to stress, as Marcos said previously, that we are also under a big pressure in Europe because of this conflict that is happening in Ukraine, and that we count on all the democracies to maintain stability, and that we can team and work together for the global security, and by respecting each other's views, for sure, and by recognizing that India, because sorry, the world order is changing. India has to bring more, and that's why we are supporting the accession of India to the UN Security Council.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I come to our two Indian representatives to kind of respond to some of those points that were raised, Fernando Gutiérrez, can I just ask you, what do you view as the top 4 or 5 opportunities for India and Europe cooperation, specifically in the Med?
Okay. Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to Raisina Dialogue for allowing us to be here today and presenting our short points. And thank you also to the Indian delegation to have come and been here today. I have to speak coming from 3 different roles I'm playing. I'm a senator of Spain from a specific part of Spain, which is in the African continent, which is called Melilla. It's a small city in northern Morocco. I have been chairing also the special group for the Mediterranean and Middle East in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly for the last 3 years. And I also speak from that point of view. And also from my last role in the life, which was before becoming a politician, I was a military in the Spanish Armed Forces for 44 years. And I had the opportunity also, as I already explained to the Indian colleagues, to work with the Indian Armed Forces, which is a matter of honor and pleasure for me. As already our president in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, Marco Perestrello, stated, we represent an alliance of democracies, and we see India as the largest democracy in the world, and we want to exchange and to share with them our democratic values and the effort for the international rules-based order. As I'm sure they will explain, the rules-based order is a matter of controversy because we have to define which are the rules to be followed. In these 2 days, we'll talk very much about for sure, India, Middle East, and European Union corridor, and I think economic corridor, and I think it's going to be a topic of discussion, and I will be very interested and very keen to hear about it. And for the starting proof point, and has been already stated before, we are looking for expanding or opening that initiative, which is a very extraordinary initiative, to other actors in the Mediterranean, for instance, as Turkey is, and I think it's a good initiative. And also to keep in mind the support provided to this initiative by our other allied in the other side of the ocean, which is the United States, that the initiative has been supported by both last presidents in the United States. We will also emphasize the India-Africa trade increasing, that for the initiative which is called India-Africa Bridge by the Prime Minister of India. And I think it's a good initiative to increase trade with Africa from the 6.5 to the 12% in these coming years. We have also shared challenges, as it is the climate change. My country experienced a very tough flooding, devastating issue last November. India has a very long experience on monsoon consequences, and I think we can learn very much each other. We have to learn many more from India that we can teach India on these issues. From my last point would be in the security sector governance. I have already mentioned it, but the security sector reform in NATO, we are focusing since NATO strategy concept on 2022 to the southern neighborhood, which is happening in the African continent with decreasing presence of the Russian and Chinese proxies there, with something that was called before Wagner Company, and now it's called Africa Corps. And we would like to have also to share with India the opportunity to try to influence on the regular armed forces in the African continent to replace the so-called militia supported by foreign countries in the continent to fight with two phenomena in the continent, which are the terrorism in one side and the migration in the other side, are coming from armed forces in the countries which are not strictly reliant on democratic principles, and India, which is a strong democratic rules-based armed forces, could provide a big help on this matter in the southern neighborhood. Many thanks, Sharon.
Thank you, thank you. Branka, let me come to you. I feel like we've been talking about reshaping the rules-based order for a number of years now, not only in this context, but in all sorts of relationships, bilateral and multilateral. However, it still remains true that while we agree on aspects of it, there are voices that have been marginalized from that international order, and they now need to be taken into account. They need to be listened to. And what's going to be reshaped is going to be something different from what we've seen before. What are the big changes that we can expect to see?
We are hoping to see, and we are advocating for the world to realize that there are changing dynamics. There are countries which have grown and are doing better than many other countries and aren't part of the, I would say, the security shaping narratives. Starting with the UNSC membership, permanent membership, a country of 1.4 billion, with the fourth largest economy heading towards the third largest, and we're still not discussing about how our institutions are not living up to the expectations of the changing world order. That would be step one. Step two, in his initial comments, Marcos spoke about, of course, the Ukraine-Russia challenge. That is a case of aggression, again, not following the international rules-based order. For us, the biggest concern is of terrorism. Terrorism emanating not just on our borders, which we are handling for past 7 decades. What we're telling the world is that we need to prioritize that. We need to ensure that there is accountability. And any global world order, if it respects its global trade order, rules-based law, they have to address this particular concern. And that is where we are also coming from. Again, I just like to reiterate here that India has not been a country which escalates. It only responds to escalation, which is violent in manner, which we have seen coming repeatedly. Having said that, India and Europe, in your initial comments, you mentioned how some global leaders are retreating from their responsibility. So it is time that democracies align together to ensure that the leadership continues to be of democracies, rather than allowing autocracies to take over. So that would be the biggest, I think, partnership that we can we should talk about. In terms of partnership, we've touched upon defense. In the recent skirmish that you saw, the war that you saw between India and Pakistan, you saw our defense systems living up to the expectations of the global world standards. And maybe we could look at aligning more in terms of technology, in terms of manufacturing, and how we can collaborate better to create systems which protect the world and where we can defend our borders and talk about sovereignty. The second, of course, is the challenge of disinformation that we are seeing coming through media platforms, through social media. How do we handle that? The cyber warfare that is also impacting national security and sovereignty of various nations. So I think I see more convergences between India and European region in terms of trade, in terms of course, the free trade agreement that we're discussing and hopefully we'll have before the end of the year. So those are things which I feel India looks towards the European region as a stable partner in understanding our commitment to the shared goals of equality, justice, peace, and prosperity.
Are we reaching a more pragmatic stage of the relationship? And I'm just saying this broadly in terms of international relations. We're starting to find commonality even among the differences. We say, look, on these things, we might not align or see eye to eye as in any relationship, but fundamentally, there's so many things that we can work on and should work on with democracy anchoring it and the rules-based order anchoring it. Dinesh, let me just come to you. We haven't talked about this yet, but it's an important aspect when we talk about cooperation here in the Med. And that's challenges, difficulties of doing business and the practicalities of it. So we often hear from European or American companies that, it's difficult to do business in India. There are challenges there. And then I think that on the flip side, we hear, well, the EU is too bureaucratic. And, EU and India have been trying to do a free trade agreement for a number of years. What does India need to do to attract business and foreign direct investment? And what does, or should I say, is Europe able to create a more agile bureaucratic structure to respond better to the needs of today?
Well, good afternoon to everybody. First of all, my heart really goes out to the near and dear ones who have lost their lives in this horrible, horrible crash. And I'm sure the agencies will find out the causes of it. Having said that, we are actually very sad. And while we were having that meeting, the news came. So obviously, we are not in the right frame of mind. But let me thank ORF and the team for this very, very important event. And I want to be philosophical and not transactional. Your question referred to transactionals. So first of all, we'll have to understand, we want a relationship of values, shared democracy, or we want transaction, right? I personally feel that as far as India and Europe is concerned, I don't think so we need to labor about relationship. See, the entire, focus at the moment we have talked about is relationship. And relationship was ever there. If you go back in history, I think India and Mediterranean region, the relationship is about 2,500 years old, right from the time of Indus Valley. Whether it was mathematics, whether it was astrology, whether it was botanical, we had the knowledge and we have the knowledge. And we shared. And even as far as business was concerned, if you take the Silk Route, directly or indirectly, Europe had a lot to gain. So as far as India is concerned, it's suddenly, you lose a friend. And sometimes in the crisis, you say, oh my God, I had a friend there. And let's call that friend. And I think we are in that kind of a situation. The world is into a huge crisis. And I don't think so we can express or we even know the kind of crisis. I think in this century of humanity, there has not been such a huge crisis. And that crisis has come about because the shared value of democracy itself changed. Democracy became transactional. It was not value-based. The values went into basement. So that's value-based. And I just mentioned on a lighter note that now the golden rule is what? Whoever has gold makes the rule. And the rules keep on changing. So, as far as India is concerned, it's a huge, big, old, we call it in India, prachin. And there is no English word for that. It means ancient. And that ancient India has developed in thinking, and we live by that the world itself is a family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So we look at the world as a family. And within our family also there is democracy. If I want to paint my house of a color, I dare not do it myself. I have to ask my children, I have to ask my wife, my wife asked me. So it's democracy. And that democracy in India is vibrant. And I'm very happy that Europe has woken up and said, oh my God, I had a friend in India. Where is he lost? Now that friend has done well. Yeah, you can clap. There's no tax on that. Now that friend has done well. The friend is now third largest economy. So that friend can give me value. So in short, this is the right time when the world is in huge crisis. And technology has brought us together, but at the same time, technology has created a lot of crisis. Today, the war is going to be, earlier in the war, soldiers used to get killed. You're a soldier. And I don't want anybody to get killed. But now, civilians are getting killed who have nothing to do with the war. So in India, and I'll conclude here, in India, when we talk about relationship, we talk about marriage, it is not between one person to another person. Indian marriage is like family. So when we talk about Europe and India, or Europe, Asia, wherever, is people to people. So we have got to go deep down. And the deep down can only happen if we meet frequently at people's level. And again, I want to thank ORF and the partner to have this initiation. And I have no doubt we have just started IMEC, that India, Mediterranean, Europe Economic Corridor. I think that's where, again, transaction also will happen. And I think we are looking at a world to be a happy place, not what it is at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for bringing up an important point of people-to-people relations, because when Raisina Med was announced in the joint statement by Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Macron back in February, it was under the effort to increase people-to-people relationship. And we're lucky to have representatives, elected representatives from a number of countries. What do you, as an elected representative, what is your, just a real quick take on what would you like to see increased in people-to-people cooperations for your country? And keep it brief, because I'd love to go to the audience next for some questions.
We already have some issues that has already been agreed with India, because next year in Spain is the 70th anniversary of the establishment of our relationship, and we have signed several agreements to share cultural, tourism, and artificial intelligence experiences, and we are dedicating next year, 26, to run on those issues. In the parliament, we used to ask our government to run those issues and to take them with interest. And I think our government did it last year in November 24. Our prime minister was in India and he signed those agreements and several more. And there are also some agreements with the defense industry, which are very, very efficient and are working well. And we have to continue with that. That's it. Thank you.
If I could choose one, besides these ones that our prime minister has also signed with India, it would be the exchange of students in universities. There are 2 courses of Portuguese in Indian universities, which I consider very relevant. And I would like to clap the initiative of India that in 2021 became an associate observers of the Portuguese speaking community countries. Portugal, Brazil, African speaking countries, and East Timor, and India is an associated observer. So students exchange would be great.
Natalia.
Yeah, it would be my first choice as well. Student exchange, especially because it opens the door to new progress in technology. And we know that the world will be very much changed by new technologies. And I'm referring to AI, for instance. And this is why President Macron and Prime Minister Modi jointly opened the AI summit in Paris recently. But I would add also this very positive, constructive initiatives such as the Ocean Summit that happened. I think this could embark the new generation. That's very important because the new generation all around the world is very sensitive to these environmental issues. And in fact, it's about their future. So we are very pleased that a country like India, such a big country, is very proactive and constructive in all these domains.
I think with people to people, it would have to be from all spectrum: defense cooperation and exchanges, intelligence cooperation and exchange, student to student, and I think making it more easier for tourism to flow across. That I think is the most important. We keep talking about trade, but we don't talk about tourism. So making it easier in terms of relaxing your visa rules, we are diplomats, but those who are visiting Europe, it becomes a challenge back home in India. And it should be vice versa too. So I think that would be the biggest hope, of course, besides the student engagements and parliamentary democracy. I think parliamentary diplomacy is something that we should be working towards. I've seen very active friendship groups in various countries I visited recently. However, how do we strengthen it and have a continuous engagement between the parliaments to at least keep hoping that the democracies will continue to rule and shape the global narrative? And talking about bureaucracy, I must say, wherever democracy thrives and there's dialogue, there's bound to be bureaucracy. They're synonymous.
Very true. Dinesh, you're not off the hook. You launched us, but give me a concrete example.
I will give you a very concrete example. My daughter-in-law is a Greek. My son has married a Greek girl who's teaching in Cambridge University. On that was just on the lighter side. But I think Europe has to play cricket. If Europe doesn't play cricket, then it's going to be difficult, right? Okay, and we can play football, all right, But and we are very big in movies, cinema. And French, we have French Film Festival too. So I think when you talk about people to people, the common person in both the region must feel the participation of it. It just has to go down to that level. And I'm telling you, music, theater, sports, even information technology, we are very big in knowledge. You see the CEOs of major companies are all of Indian origin because we have that soft power. So I think people to people is easiest. And she just mentioned about tourism. I think you should make sure that, you're welcome. If there is a threat that, oh my God, when I go there, immigration people have the duty and right to ask questions, but not to threaten, So that is where I think people to people is very important. And having said that, please visit India with the family and spend more time, not 2-3 days. Maybe ORF can have some ongoing discussion in India. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. I think also for the younger generation, the thing that draws them to countries and creates those bonds is exactly that. It's art, it's culture, it's food, it's movies, it's sports. And that's what we need to increase. I'm going to open it up for questions from the floor. I'm going to take 2 or 3 from the audience, bundle them, and then bring it back.
Thank you very much. I'm Nasheed from the Maldives. India can't leave us. It's in the Indian Ocean. And it is not comfortable listening to a conversation where the gist is that India wants to partner with Europe. I very much agree with the minister. Europe is losing the United States, their old friend. They can't trust the United States. So they want to now find a new friend, which is India. And at the same time, India is challenging China. And China is also challenging the West. So that kind of relationship is going on. Minister, I've written a few notes here. We eat the same food. We watch the same films. We read the same books. And we are the same people. And India shouldn't be having a relationship with Europe without us. And that discussion, I don't like it.
Sorry, do you have a question?
Okay. Russia is an old friend of India. Europe cannot expect India to jettison their old relationships. They have all sorts of old relationships. And every time when Europe has a fight with someone, you can't expect India to join the same fight. Now, slavery, colonialism, indentured labor, they go very deep. It's generational. And Europe must find a narrative where you can educate your people out of this bigotry. I can get a visa because I'm the former president of the Maldives. But I was trying to get a visa for my wife to come here. But she doesn't have a diplomatic passport. And that was such a challenge. We almost gave it up. So this visa business, you asked why the United Kingdom and India was trying to have a free trade agreement. The biggest stumbling block was students and visa. We like to come to Europe. I spent half my life in the United Kingdom studying there, but we also like our homes. And,
Sorry.
okay, that's kind of the relationships should flourish, but I think Europe should be mindful that it is Europe which needs India. Now it's the other way around. India doesn't necessarily need Europe that much. They have many partners, but it is Europe now must change. Thank you.
Thank you. And I saw there's a woman with her hand up right there in the maybe fourth row.
Abigail Vasilier, I work for MERICS, so the Mercator Institute on China Studies. I wanted to ask you about the FTA, the EU-India FTA, because it seems that we have good news. It's moving forward. I think the visit of the College of Commissioners was great, and now there is this new momentum. Fantastic, but actually, to make an FTA, you need companies on board. And I think we have worked quite a lot in Europe with our companies to basically trying to connect the dots. But what are the Indian companies thinking? Because for a long time, they were actually skeptical. So what are the Indian companies thinking about this FTA, and what is going to be done to put them on board with making this realistic? This was my real question, but I'm just going to say a few words on the war in Ukraine and why it matters. It does matter, because basically it became this vital interest for Europe to make sure that we have a long-lasting peace in Ukraine, right? So any partner of Europe that is actually fueling the war effort in Russia is just making it very difficult for Europe right now to think that it's going to be a very trusted partner. So that's why I think the India-Russia relationship is just going to remain something very important for the Europeans and something that we are looking at, because what we're trying to build is trust. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your point. Just behind, there's another hand up. I'll take two more, and then we'll turn it back to the audience for responses and closing statements.
Karan Gulbudayan from San Francisco. So the question also relates to definitely being from heart of Silicon Valley, and historically, that particular place, Silicon Valley, has profoundly impacted European development and also Indian development. So question I'd like to ask all of you, how the Silicon Valley and tech in other communities, which houses definitely big European and Indian communities, can help to make this connection, the corridor, economic and other ties between India to Europe and vice versa.
Great question. I'll take one more. Yes, in the back.
Kia ora koutou katoa, Professor Anne-Marie Brady from New Zealand. So I heard a lot about democracies partnering together in the rules-based international order, and I heard something that actually really concerned me about democracies continuing to rule and shape the global order. The rules-based international order was set up by a range of states. I mean, the post-World War II order was set up by the Soviet Union, as well as small states like New Zealand and the United States. And so I think that the multilateral rules-based international order protects all states, regardless of their political system, and we should respect that in order to interact together. So I'm just challenging why we wouldn't want in this, if we all agree that the rules-based international order is important for us, why we wouldn't want to partner with all potential partners who see the value of the international order and the rules-based international order. And also the other question I had is I heard the common ground between the EU or Europe and India, very different perspectives on the Russian invasion of Ukraine and some common views on counterterrorism and climate change. Perhaps, what's your view on China? Because China is one where we're seeing a return of might is right, and it's the great powers, the three great powers, are all engaging in activities that are challenging or ignoring the international rules-based order. So what's your view on the things that China is doing? And does that help to bring you together?
Yes, I just like to reassure our friend from Maldives that India takes everyone along. India doesn't forget all its allies and partners and those who are part of the Indian Ocean. Let me also remind you, India was the country which brought African Union into the G20. So we understand our responsibilities towards Global South as well. Having said that, I'd just like to say something with regards to the Russia and most trusted partner, India becoming, European Union having a doubt about us being most trusted. We need to start dehyphenating. In some cases, we can have a fantastic relationship on various parameters and not be stuck up on one particular instance. Like India can also turn around and say, hello, for us to make you the most trusted partner, start calling out Pakistan and stop doing trade with Pakistan. It cannot be just a one-way. We need to understand our divergences to be able to make our convergences much stronger. I'd leave it with that.
Anyone else on Silicon Valley, the rules-based order pertaining to non-democracies, and China?
Yeah. So about the Silicon Valley, it's more, I would say, general reflection. It's that we have to share somehow common views. So we are completely, fully agreed to develop new technologies and to have some, the governments will put some incentive for that, and the companies must have enough freedom to develop these new technologies together across partnership, across the world. But I think on the European perspective, we still think there's a need for regulation on these new technologies, especially what is thrown on the social networks, and that can be and the impact it can have increased by AI and so on. So I think this is something we have to talk about also. It's about ethics. And then my last comment will be about the conflict, as you mentioned, between Ukraine and Russia. It's a war. It's not a mere conflict. It poses an existential threat to some countries like the Baltic countries, Poland, and it's affecting the whole of our populations in Europe. So we cannot diminish the impact it will have on the European community, but even more largely globally, how it will impact our future relationship, because definitely Russia has been aggressing Ukraine and we support Ukraine.
Mr. Gutiérrez, final thoughts.
Yeah, concerning the international rules-based order emanating from the ending of the Second World War and the democracies that adjusted, everything has been destroyed, has been changed dramatically, and we have lived in a period of bilateralism between two powers, focusing the world in those two powers, and we're moving to multilateralism. We have focused today in the change of the Security Council. Some new members will have to be part of them because the world is changing, and we have to make that change and to adjust to that new international order, and that we are moving for in these times of critical changes. Thank you.
Dinesh, you get the final word.
Yeah, as always. Thank you so much. No, I think, again, philosophical, that the planet Earth is absolutely in deep crisis, but the nature of humanity is of joy and blissful. So otherwise, the world is really very beautiful. But terror and democracy cannot go hand in hand. You have got to choose whether you are choosing terror or democracy. And sometimes for the transactional reason, we look at our own selfish motive. So in conclusion, I'll just say the world is great. Let us make the world greater again.
Please join me in applauding our panelists for the curtain raiser. And if I could request everyone to join us at the front of the stage for a family photo.